Hi there, welcome to the channel or welcome back to the channel. My name is AJ Bahari. I'm a counselor and coach specializing in helping people recover from BPD relationships and any relationship type, from narcissistic personality disorder relationships or BPD comorbid NPD, which not as many people are as everybody thinks, type of relationships, and codependency and other things as well that have their origin in the family of origin, their genesis in your life of childhood woundedness, that is the major key reason why people get into a relationship, significant other especially, with a person with BPD or NPD, and it's an unconscious process. So that's something that you need to learn a lot more about in your own healing and recovery journey. And as I've said on this channel so many times, and in my podcast, and I'll have a new podcast coming soon too, it's so crucial that you stop trying to become a BPD expert. People are doing that all over the place. There are a few people, I guess, that are BPD experts aside from myself, but fewer and fewer, because everybody wants to talk about the narcissist, like everybody is a narcissist, and people with codependency are narcissists, and we all have narcissistic traits, and we all have borderline traits. What is up with this narrative, these narratives out there? And then the negative impacting way that people are talking about codependency. It doesn't make any sense. And then people are saying, well, codependency isn't a mental illness, but it should be. Well, not exactly, but codependency is a formidable mental health challenge, because in codependency, before you're in the relationship with a borderline or a narcissist, intimately or otherwise in other areas of your life maybe as well, you develop codependency as an adaptive response to protect yourself in young childhood from something that wounded you. It doesn't always have to be a borderline or a narcissistic parent, but it often is. And family dynamics and family dysfunction happens in more families than not now. And people are coming out of those families with woundedness in childhood, many who have codependency maybe among some other challenges and don't realize it or don't want to admit it because it's been thrown out there like it's just either a meaningless term, or I've seen so many things on codependency that don't make any sense at all. It is a trauma response, but it doesn't have to be a capital T one. It can come from woundedness in childhood that people with codependency, the major first sign of codependency, which is not one you're going to be able to figure out if you're codependent by, is denial. So people are denying that they were hurt or wounded in childhood, or maybe don't remember or don't know how that happened. But people are like, I don't know why I'm having these issues today, or why I've been with this person with BPD or NPD and I can't get away from them, or I'm trying to get away from them. I don't know what to do. My life is ruined. My life is upside down. How did I get there? Why did I stay? All these really important questions to seek a healing recovery process, working with an expert like myself. If I resonate with you, out here to work with you on these things, because so many people with codependency are in this denial space. But I had a great childhood. My parents were just fabulous. Well, we're not always saying that people get wounded in childhood because your parents are malevolent or intend malice or are always cluster B. For many people, that's not the case. But the childhood woundedness to varying degrees is the case in humanity, in so many people now. Intergenerational trauma in all kinds of forms and ways, some obvious, some not, some cluster B, some not exactly. But if you're denying that you're a codependent today, why? Because having codependency is just something that happens from childhood woundedness, that if you learn more about it, you can definitely heal it. And it's in the healing of codependency and maybe some other issues that people have that go along with that or in concert with that. And whatever happened in your childhood that wounded you, that unconsciously led you to meeting this man or woman that you thought was the most attractive, that's the person for you. but you didn't know that he or she was a borderline or a narcissist, or maybe comorbidly both. And you don't know about the idealization. You probably do now, but you didn't know about the idealization phase for those with BPD and the people pleasing. And you didn't understand narcissistic love bombing or what narcissists are really all about. So, and then people will say, but I can't be codependent because I've had other relationships and it wasn't like this, right? Like a BPD or an NPD relationship. And that's very true for people. But then I have a lot of clients who, looking back on that, will go, well, yeah, my last ex, or the ex before that ex, or my ex-wife and this other ex, or my ex-husband and this other ex, they kind of, when I look back now as I'm understanding more, they seem to have some BPD traits or patterns, or maybe narcissistic traits or patterns. But that's not always the case for people. And so when you're in a relationship with somebody that's not cluster B, then the core of your childhood woundedness, whether you're aware of it or not, that creates the codependency, whether you're aware you have that or not, doesn't get triggered the way that it gets triggered when you're with a borderline or narcissist, for all kinds of reasons. So I'm somebody who's out here, like I said, online for 29 years, working, because offline prior, for 34 years with clients in this area. It's my specialty, it's my expertise, with both, narcissistic parent, narcissistic ex, or both, borderline, ex or parent, or both, adult child with BPD. Maybe you are the adult child of a parent with BPD or NPD. All of these different relationship types between, people with BPD, people with NPD. For you out there with codependency, you really want to heal, you really want to get this work done. Do you really want to understand the difference between borderline personality disorder, seriously, because there is a difference, and narcissistic personality disorder? Do you really want to hear the truth about codependency, which isn't like I've heard in so many places or seen written in so many places? The codependents have narcissistic traits too. Well, some may, but most don't, right? And some people with codependency could really be a narcissist. But that's not most people that I work with who really want to find themselves and understand what happened and why they stayed, and was it your fault, and why it's not your fault. What are these relational dynamics? Why do borderlines or why do narcissists do what they do? And I try to bring a sense of humanity to this. No, we're not going to make excuses for the borderline. We're not going to make excuses for a narcissist, because abuse is abuse. And you need to recognize that how you've been abused or how you're still being abused by a borderline or narcissist has absolutely nothing to do with love. And that can be the heartbreaking component that people just don't understand for a time. So what I'm here to say today is that codependency is not some negative, term that suggests that you're weak or that it's your fault or anything like that. So I think that people have to really look at that, because people are vilifying codependence now in many areas, especially some dude on Quora that I keep hearing from clients about. So the other thing I think that's really highly misunderstood out there, and you can think about what you think about this, but there's so many people now, they were talking about BPD, YouTube, other places, but now they kind of more have gravitated to talking about the narcissist, right? Because in a sense, some of them believe, erroneously, that borderlines are just a variation or are narcissists too. It's not true. What is true is that there is unhealthy pathological narcissism in people with untreated BPD that's not as strong as a pathological narcissism in NPD, which isn't as strong on its own as a malignant and a narcissist, or even then we go to the psychopath, where in this pathological narcissism across the scale in cluster B starts in one area and with BPD, and then gets stronger with each of the other diagnoses. But it doesn't mean anybody really has all of everything. Very, very rarely is that true, but a lot of people believe that. So how do you feel about this label? It's not just a label. I don't like labels for the sake of labels. How do you feel about the idea, the reality likely, that you may well have codependency? And I want to talk more about this. I have a podcast, but maybe I'll talk more about it here. I'm not sure at this point what I'm doing on this channel in terms of topics, because there's so much more I want to say, so much more I just want to put my hat in the ring with my 34 years of not only experience working with clients in these areas, and a high amount of expertise that I have accrued over all those years, plus an education, plus my own lived experience. So I had two parents that were narcissists with comorbidities, and I've been on both sides of the cluster B fence when it comes to BPD, and I healed and recovered from that. It was a label. I didn't really have it full-blown in 1990, so a long time ago. And I've been doing this work, and I do work with people with BPD, and I sometimes do work with people with NPD, but the majority of the people I work with are people with codependency who are trying to find out what hurt them in childhood, what are the connecting dots to how did you get with the person with BPD, what are you going to do now? Are you in the limbo? Are you on off? Have you been ghosted and discarded? Are you in a relationship cycle from hell? Losing yourself more and more, and just so determined to learn more about the person with BPD or NPD because you think that's your closure. You think that's your way forward. It's not. Because every moment that you focus on a borderline or narcissist, whether that be a parent and or an ex or an on-off, you're not sure if it's an ex, wherever you are in all these iterations of these most tragic, trauma-bonded, unhealthy relationships that lack love. So are you the type of person that's giving? Will they take? Are you trying so hard to please them? Do you realize that if you are, you're doing that out of childhood woundedness that you may not be aware of, and you're doing it because you need something in your childhood wounded you to the point where you need validation from outside of yourself to bolster your self-esteem, to feel better about yourself. And then there are other aspects of codependency that are more complicated. Like how many people with codependency want to give, want to please. That makes you feel good about yourself. But people with codependency don't have a functional and healthy relationship to and with self. Often don't know a lot about self-care, don't practice self-care. Always worrying about what others think, how others feel. How can you help them? How can you rescue them? How can you fix them? Are you enabling them? You just might say, like so many people with codependency do, but I just really want to help him or her because I saw a good person in there. Yeah, fragments of a good person in a borderline or narcissist potentially, but that's not who they are. And who they were in the beginning of idealization with a borderline or love bombing with a narcissist, that's not who they are either. And so you need to focus squarely on yourself, and that's not narcissistic. And if you're able, and I help clients to do this all the time, because if you can't do it on your own, a lot of people can't break the trauma bond without help. And so the thing about that is, when you want to focus on yourself, when you want to get into your own healing and therapy work, and I'm out here to work those who resonate with me, it's not a narcissistic thing you're doing. And if you go no contact, or you're going low contact, you're working toward no contact, then you feel like you're a horrible person or a bad person. This is codependency in the way it manifests. And then you feel like you're ghosting them. I've seen so many people out there now, clients have said to me, well, I'm just going to ghost the borderline or the narcissist like they ghosted and discarded me. How does that make me any better? This isn't a competition, ladies and gentlemen. This is your mental health on the line. And these relationships with borderlines or narcissists do not work out. They do impact you so negatively. You do get traumatized and or, depending on your childhood, re-traumatized. You're losing yourself by the moment. Every single time there's, the ups and the downs, the turnarounds, the rages at you. You're being blamed for stuff you don't even know in the beginning or for a while. What are they talking about? And the other thing I'm quite aware of is that people are coming to everybody's information out here new all the time, because unfortunately people are starting to Google. Many people are long on the way but still stuck, but understanding a lot about this. But I can't underscore enough for you how much your understanding of a borderline or a narcissist, or if you want to meld them together, which is really inaccurate, incorrect, and not helpful, is not going to bring you closure, is not going to help you heal. It can be a part of a healing journey. Like when I work with clients, yes, they tell me a lot about the ex and or a parent, a cluster B. And whether it's a narcissist, no, I've never been a narcissist, but I have lived experience with what that's like. And I had a relationship with a BPD, NPD alcoholic. So I've been in your shoes too, and it's miserably horrible. And you do lose aspects of yourself, and you are being triggered back to core pain that you might not understand where it's coming from in codependency. And so the other thing too is that, it's really time for you to get real. What are you waiting for? Hard to let go. You can't just walk away and run like everybody says out there, because for most people, not every single last person, can't break the trauma bond. And you continue to ruminate and suffer the cognitive dissonance and the focus because you're trying to learn so much about them. And guess what that is? Another abject, self-sacrificing abandonment of precious you. You learned how to do that as an overcompensatory strategy to some kind of woundedness in your childhood or your teen years, because nobody does that and it's healthy for anybody. So think about codependency. Think about what your experience is, and try to realize that the number one thing that a lot of people with codependency are going to do for a time is deny that they have codependency, is deny that there's a problem. Oh, there's a problem, but you're going to deny what it is, your codependency, your part of the dynamics with a borderline or a narcissist. Now, please hear me clearly. You're not responsible for what a borderline or narcissist does at all in terms of how they treat you, how they have no empathy for you, how they abuse you, how they use you, how they can't love you, how with narcissists it's more of a game than ever than it is with the average borderline. Maybe some people with really severe BPD, maybe some of them are BPD, NPD, comorbid. But what that means, it doesn't mean they both that they're diagnosed with both personality disorders full blown. So, and I see a lot of people out there, well, my person with BPD, my ex with BPD, but they had narcissistic traits too. Well, this shows me and tells me there's a lot of you out there that still understand borderline personality disorder that well. Because there's pathological narcissism in borderline personality disorder that aren't, quote, narcissistic traits, unquote. And so at the same time, when I work with clients, it's multifaceted, multi-layered process. So I meet you where you are in a humanistic way, and I listen, and I guide you, and I help you to strategize, and I help you to, work on some things that will help you to create some change from the agony you're in right now, and then how to find you again and heal codependency. But also, I answer clients' questions about narcissists or about borderlines all the time, and people talk about their exes, and they need to do that. So I don't have a set agenda that we have to go step 1, step 2, step 3, and you have to do it in my formula. When I work with people, I want to attune with you. I want to help you with where you're at. All your questions, all your confusion, all your pain, all your lostness, feeling lost as self, all the confusion, because it's heartbreaking among how dangerous it is and other things. And people need to work on this, and you will not get over it. And time doesn't just heal it without getting expert help to help you through this process. I'm just one expert out here. If you resonate with me, I'm out here to work with you. And it's really important that you realize that unless you have a child with a person with BP or NPD, then low contact is going to be the goal there. And that's really going to be a whole other thing to work on, how to strategize about dealing with what it means to try to, as they say, quote, co-parent, unquote, with a borderline or a narcissist in particularly if you're a man and the mother of your children is a woman with BPD or a male with NPD. Or a female with NPD. What am I saying? Sorry about that. So the key thing here is, do you want to get off the roller coaster of the borderline or the narcissist or maybe the comorbidity both? Do you badly enough to start learning how to look at you? Because so many people with codependency never learned in childhood, for one reason or another, it's varied, how to really be there for you, how to care about yourself, how to have those boundaries, how to have that healthy, difference between self and other. A lot of people with codependency really are uncomfortable to look at themselves or their childhoods or their past or what's been happening because it hurts. But you have to lean into that adversity to have a chance to heal it. So codependency is real, and I don't describe it the way a lot of people out there do. It's ridiculous. And also, it's not to impugn you at all as a human being. If you're codependent, it doesn't mean you're weak. If you're codependent, it doesn't mean this negative thing, that negative thing, the other negative thing. It doesn't mean you have narcissistic traits or would be narcissistic to focus on you. Not at all. It's what you need. And people need to understand that you're not just going to walk out of a relationship with a borderline or a narcissist or comorbidity both and be fine and go to the next person. That's a recipe for disaster, because that next person, I've had so many clients do this, if they're not recycling back to the previous ex or on off, you go forward without any help and you're just trying to do the best you can, and you think, well, videos and see, my videos are not a substitute for therapy, and neither is my podcast. And then there's a lot of people out there who we don't know where they're coming from, but they're really vilifying codependency and calling people with codependency stupid and all kinds of other things that are just aberrant, because they are trying too hard to help from a place of not being as educated as maybe what their writing looks like on Quora or how they sound on YouTube. And just because everybody, like these guys who've been with a BPD and or an NPDX, and then they make their channel, some of them do really well, some of them make sense, a lot of them don't. And a lot of men are and some women are just identifying with these new coaches on the block, and they can be very dangerous. You have to be very careful. So the bottom line is, what are you going to do for you today that maybe has just felt like you don't deserve it, or you got to focus more on that cluster B still because somehow you're going to understand and fix it? You're not. You might understand more, but that understanding is not going to help you heal. And the more you focus on the borderline or the narcissist, and the more you do that and ignore yourself, the more it's like a snakes and ladders game. Every time you're listening about borderlines or narcissists, all those millions of videos and stuff out there, you're going to slide back to square one, because it's not about you. And what is about you is what you need to learn so that you can heal from a BPD relationship of any type, an NPD relationship of any type. And many people who have been with a borderline or a narcissist, or you're on, off, etc., have a borderline or narcissistic parent. Not all people, but many people. And then there's this one other thing for a lot of people with codependency, because I've heard this from clients over the years. But my parents did the best they could. My parents put a roof over my head. My parents fed us and clothed us, and we had everything we needed, when we were growing up. Well, some people don't even get that. But yes, that's something, isn't it? But it doesn't speak to what happened in your childhood emotionally. So I can just share for part of, really quickly, in my family of origin, I had a malignant narcissist, psychopathic, and I was told by a therapist, dark triad father, who made a lot of money, put a roof over our head. We lived in lovely houses with swimming pools and all the, like when we were little, all the toys and all the stuff we wanted growing up, stuff and food, yes, and clothes, but nothing emotionally at all, which is very wounding. and abuse on top of it. So I'm just explaining my experience where, yeah, all those other boxes were ticked, and that's important because for some people those aren't even ticked. But when they clothe you and they feed you and they house you, it doesn't mean they know how to love you. It doesn't mean they know how to raise you. It doesn't mean that, and even if they're trying and they're not a cluster B parent, doesn't mean that they aren't carrying intergenerational trauma, so that you get wounded by two things. Wounded on the one side of what you needed and unmet needs, and wounded on the side of not only what happened, but what didn't happen for you. And there's a lot that didn't happen for people with codependency, because this is how you're carrying this into adulthood and unconsciously choosing, without knowing, these really impossible people to relate to who are going to damage you even more. You need to learn how to stop making those choices. You need to learn what's underneath why you've made those choices, because you haven't consciously made those choices. So it's really important to give codependency its due in your life, because it is an adverse experience that is adaptive in childhood to survive some things that are hurting you to varying degrees for different people. And it has overlaps for some people with BPD in codependency and severity, or overlaps with dependent personality from cluster C. Bottom line is, it's not an established mental health condition, codependency, but it is a formidable mental health challenge. And I don't think there's one of you out there right now, if you look in the mirror and you're honest with yourself, are you happy with that borderline? Are you happy with that narcissist? Are you happy with being yelled at, screamed at, given the silent treatment? Are you happy when everything's your fault? When you're losing yourself? There's probably no happy left. So why do you continue to fool yourself, sacrifice yourself, and avoid yourself when you need to be your own focus? So, like I said, out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and I have much more coming. But codependency's number one trait, if you will, is denial. So think about that today. If you still think, well, I was with this borderline or this narcissist and yada yada and all these things that people are saying, and this fits, and I experienced this and that and the other, but that doesn't mean I'm a codependent. Why would I be a codependent? How come? Like, I don't have codependency just because. Why all the denial when you don't know who you are after these relationships, or the relationship recycling 10, 20, 50 times with the same borderline or narcissist, and you've lost yourself now because you know what? You didn't know yourself as well as you thought you did in the beginning. You might have known a lot about yourself, but people with codependency are also having some influence in their lives of a false self. Not to the same degree as a borderline, which is not even to the same degree as the narcissistic false self. Codependency is real. Codependency is important to acknowledge where it fits, which is for most people who get into these relationships at all. And then the challenge is, and when you're ready, and I hope maybe you'll think about it, that if I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you when you're ready, to lean into the adversity. That's what you need to know about how you were hurt. Or you may already know, but you keep shoving it away because unconsciously you expect this borderline or narcissist to actually, your wounded inner child expects the borderline or narcissist to actually give you something that you so need emotionally, and the validation from outside of yourself as a codependent. And you're not consciously aware of this, but you're expecting a narcissist or a borderline to do something like that for you in a way of reciprocating all the over-giving, all the over-empathy, all the over-caring, all the give to all their take. And then when you need something, you lose a loved one. You have a loved one who's sick or ill, or you break your leg, or you get hurt or ill somehow. And you want that partner. You're like telling them what's happening for you, and then you get ghosted and discarded because they don't deal, because they're not real. You're real, and you might be in more pain than you know. Now, the question is, are you ready to find out why so that you can change that? Because you're never going to change, rescue, or fix a borderline or a narcissist, but you can change, rescue your wounded inner child inside, and create a whole new life going forward where you heal from the relationship, you heal from your childhood, you heal the codependency, you become an independent, healthier person with boundaries and who knows how to soothe themselves and take care of themselves. And then when you are with someone else and you're sharing time with your friends, that's all bonus, because you're going to be so amazing for you in your own life when you learn up, that maybe, but when you learn how to finally be there for you, that internal validation, sitting with yourself, maybe being on your own for a few days, just doing your work or whatever, and not needing anything from anyone. And no, we don't want to create you into an island. And then there are people with codependency who also experience counterdependency. And that's a vacillation of a spectrum. It's not people have either codependency or counterdependency, and never the twain meets, because it always does. There's always this vacillating back and forth. So if you think you're ultra, quote, independent, unquote, because you're counterdependent, no. Counterdependency is part of codependency for some, for many, and counterdependency is not healthy and is not interdependency. Counterdependence is as codependent as codependence, and neither counterdependence or codependence is about independence. Isn't it time that you work with somebody, myself out here to work with you by resonate with you, to find out who you really are, to find out what happened, how did your life get off the rails, why are you trying to rescue and fix somebody who you can't do that for, and why does it seem like they're the only person for you? People with codependency have their own childhood wounded repetition compulsion cycles that get played out in the dynamics with narcissists and borderlines. And no, that's not me saying that people with codependency are doing exactly what the other side, the cluster Bs, are doing. Not at all. But think about it, because until you're ready to see and admit and lean into what it means to look at what codependency is in your life and why it's there and how it originated, what was the woundedness, and how that's driven you into a cluster B relationship, and or maybe a few of them over time, and or it's also a key reason why you can't break the trauma bond codependency is, and all that means for each individual. So think about it. And if you are in denial today, maybe try to really give that some thought. Do a little journaling about that. Because if you can't break that trauma bond with that borderline, you're ruminating, you're on, off, you're watching their social media, reverse hoovering as I call it. You're maybe reverse hoovering down. The self-reverse hoover is the watching of the social media. Are you all over yourself, criticizing, why can't I let go? Why do I stay? Why am I putting up with this? You got an inflamed internal critic, and that speaks to the woundedness from your childhood. You need to know you better. You need to love you more. You need to be your own independent individual who heals codependency and heals from the relationship. That's how you're going to break the trauma bond. And that requires therapy. I hope something I said was helpful. I don't want to say anything negative about people with codependency. The only thing I would say for you to really think about, aside from what I've said, is how you are staying in a stuck place, not choosing that, but how you continue to hurt you, and or now that you know you're with a borderline or a narcissist, or you highly suspect that with the patterns of, BPD or NPD in someone that you've tried to give the world to, and no good deed goes unpunished, then you've got to ask yourself, the fit is, it's either narcissist with borderlines, or it's codependence with borderlines, or it's narcissist with narcissists, and it's codependence with narcissists, or it's borderlines with narcissists. Like, people with codependency often have abandonment fears, often have a fear of emotional intimacy, and you may or may not be aware of that. But so many people, you end up with these people who can't give you what you most want because you don't really know what it's about or how to handle it. Again, coming from childhood woundedness. So codependency isn't a dirty word. It isn't a bad word. It means a lot. And it's a formidable mental health challenge that everybody should be grateful for. Isn't a mental health diagnosis or mental illness, because neither is BPD or NPD really. This serious mental illness that everybody throws it out there to be. Oh, it's serious. And yes, they're dangerous. And yes, they'll steal you from you. And yes, they'll use you. And no, they can't love you. But BPD is in its own right an amazingly core, primal trauma response. And so is NPD. But this does not excuse how they treat you, not excuse how they've hurt you, but it should give you an impetus to know that when you can just get past your denial, and even if you can't, start working with someone. If I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you. Whether you believe in that you have codependency or not, let's talk about it. Let's work it out. Let's connect the dots, or if the dots don't connect, let's figure out what it was in your childhood that led you to be where you are in your adult relating today. Because something emotionally there is wounding to you, and it has been wounding to you, and then you get with a cluster B and you get even more lost to self, and you get more hurt, and no, you're not responsible for what they do to you. But once you know, and you've done your research enough, and maybe you're still overdoing it, focusing on the cluster Bs, once you know and suspect, or someone's told you they've been diagnosed with BPD, and or you see those patterns of BPD or the patterns of NPD, once you know that and you still don't leave, because it's really hard and difficult and people need help, and if you're still staying there and you're stuck and you're being hard on yourself, but you want this to work and you're in denial, how hard are you being on yourself now about this too? So many people are asking the question out there, not only clients that come to work with me start with these questions. Why did I stay? Why do I still want about? What am I doing to myself? Because these are the questions that you need how to really learn to dive deep in with someone like myself. I'm an expert out here. If you resonate with me, I don't resonate with everybody, right? Can't work with everybody. But I help my clients to really do this healing work so that they won't be engaging with cluster Bs anymore. Because as tragic as it is for many, whatever the relationship type is, or if you've been in a marriage, if you've been with a person with BPD or NPD long term, it's heartbreaking because you will have seen positive pieces in them interdispersed with all of the abuse. There's the abuse and the awful and a little bit of intermittent reinforcement, and then the other. Stockholm syndrome, trauma bonding, betrayal bonding, and people without codependency don't tend to stay there. And if you're stuck, then I hope you realize today that codependency is just a descriptor for what you might well be dealing with and might be making things really difficult for you. But it is not a negative word or something that means it's all your fault, because it's not your fault. But like I said, when you know what's going on now, whether you realize that maybe you are a codependent to some degree or other or not, then you're volunteering for the continued abuse you get. It's still not your fault. But come on, don't you care? You've got to care more about yourself than maybe you're able to right now. And where's that coming from? What's that about? Yes, you've been broken down. Yes, you've been traumatized by the borderline or the narcissist. But that's not the whole enchilada of why you're lost to yourself. It's a big piece and it's not your fault. But once you know what's going on and you keep wanting to go back, then you need to get help to figure out what's that about. Because it's about the codependency. It's about some woundedness in childhood. It's about repetition compulsions that are unconsciously playing out through you that you're not aware of, because otherwise you wouldn't keep doing what hurts you the most to do. I hope that was helpful. Take care.